Welcome, my friends. This is Maniacal Incorporated, continuing my run where I try and save the Irish economy from itself. In the last video, I released Ireland from the United Kingdom, and that left us with a massive bureaucracy penalty, which we've just almost, nearly, gotten under control. So I'm going to work a bit on that today, as well as getting the economy up and running. Thank you all very much to everybody who watched the last episode and who left any comments. A big shout out in particular to Arzer G, if I'm getting the name correct. They made an excellent point. One of the first things I did when I started with the government administration is I put it on standardized filing system. So this increased our paper consumption and it increased our financial costs. However, it was of absolutely no benefit until we had about 2 or 3 of these buildings up and running. Now, I was very lucky in the last run to get rid of the institutions quickly and to get hereditary bureaucracy instituted quickly. If one of them had taken a slight bit longer to enforce, it's entirely possible that we would have been losing money so quickly that putting these on standardized filing systems would have caused problems. So the best thing to do is to leave it on simple organization until you've maybe 3 of them built, and then switch over. Of course, the best thing to do, as a lot of people have been pointing out, and as I said, is to just simply keep Ireland in the United Kingdom, build up government administration in Ireland, and then release it. But if anybody is going to do a run just like the one that I've done, there's an extra bit of advice. I don't think we're going to see very many people doing runs like this. One person, though, is Garner Ireland, another Irish streamer, or an Irish YouTuber, who is making videos on Wiki3, so I'll put some links up there in the corner to his stuff. Go and support him. Go and support all the Irish YouTubers and all the Irish streamers. There isn't a huge amount of us playing Wiki3. Myself, Garner, Ireland, and Potato McWhiskey. And while we're talking about bureaucracy, we might as well deal with this. We've accidentally restored the druids to power in Ireland, without even thinking about it, without even intending to do so. It kind of struck me today, what would hereditary bureaucrats look like? And I'm doing a CK3 playthrough at the moment where I restore druidism in the Tip Volume 2 mod. And I make the point that you have the druids in Ireland, in pre-Christian Ireland, with the arrival of Christianity in the writing system. The druids adopt the writing system, they write down their body of knowledge, which is known as Shenicus, or traditions, the traditions of the Irish. And this becomes the foundation of Brehon law. So the druids, some of them basically become the Brehev, or the Brehons. They're going to continue as arbitrators of Irish law until the arrival of English law, alongside the Normans in the mid-11, early 1200s. They will continue side by side with Irish law in decline until it goes into terminal decline in the early 1600s with the flight of the Earls. And the last of the Brehon families, the hereditary Brehon families, will vanish in the mid to late 1700s. At this stage, they were serving as hereditary historians for the very last of the Gaelic noble families, as hereditary tutors, and as local educators. So what we have done, purely by accident, is we have restored the Brehons, the successors of the Druids, to power in Ireland. Within living memory, in the 1830s at least anyway, you would have had people who would have remembered the educated families in the region who would have been descendants, basically, of the Brehons, of the last of the Brehons. So we have reached out to these people and instituted them as our hereditary bureaucrats. I was planning to change off of this, but for thematic purposes, we might keep it in place. Right, enough with the history lessons. We have a bit of an idea as to what we're going to do. In Munster, we're going to get rye farms and livestock up and running. In Leinster, we're going to get a couple of industries up and running. We're going to focus on government administration as well. We do need to get that number increased. What I will actually do is we will expand by 1. And then in Ulster, we're going to eventually get a shipbuilding industry going, and also the textiles. That's what this region would have been famous for. So for thematic reasons again, we're going to pretty much do that there. For now, we're just going to let things run on and try and get that industry started and get a bit more bureaucracy, the way we can reinstate the police force. We have an opportunity to expand our technology. We're going to go for crystal glass. 33 months to get crystal glass researched. We have gotten the first of our textile mills up and running in Ulster. We have a mining accident. So a mine in Leinster has collapsed. The scale of the accident has made the tragedy a story across Leinster and the nation. We could say it's a small price to pay for the march of industry. So we basically can decide what strata of pops we want to radicalize. I think we'll go with the small price to pay for the march of industry. The industrialists will gain strength. It will, however, radicalize 5% of the lower strata pops in Leinster. And we would expect to have a lot more of those. So for our textile mill in Ulster, we're going to put it up onto dye workshops. That's going to give us 30 extra clothing. And it will slightly increase the cost of dyes, and it will increase the amount of machinists working here and decrease the amount of labourers. So we've just had a fairly big drop in the standard of living. I think it's gone from 12.3 to 12. The average is struggling. And we can see that 93% of all struggling pops are in the lower strata. And if we see, they are paying 7.8% over the base price for most of the stuff that they want. Clothing, furniture, opium. Oh boys, you'd need opium on a cold winter's day here in Ireland. Liquor is 10% above. Groceries are 42% above. Groceries are 42% above. So we're already in a position here in Leinster. We have a bit of a food industry up and running. I think we have all the... We could go for a cannery. It's going to increase the amount of fish and it's going to increase the amount of iron, but it is going to produce extra groceries. We'll try that out and we'll see how it goes. I think most of those goods are... so flour actually is... or sugar. Oh god, don't ever put flour in your tea. Sugar is kind of expensive. Iron is kind of expensive. Fish. We'll start messing around with these now in a couple of minutes. But getting the groceries down, that would be a good place to start. So we have another government administration up and running. That is taking us into bureaucracy levels where we're getting very close to being able to reinstate the police force. We might very well try and get that done, if I can remember how. So we have no police at the moment. We could go for either the local police, plus 10% landowner or political strength, or we could go for minus 5% radicals. There's an additional bureaucracy cost of minus 72, which is the same for the two of them, minus 15. I think the local police force for now. We'll be happy enough with that. I suppose it could hardly be an Irish playthrough without some bit of a food crisis. Grain is cheap. Groceries, however, 41.1% above the base rate. So we're going to need to do a good chunk of change to try and alleviate that. We're going to come to Munster, to our rye farms. We're going to switch them off of potatoes to apple orchards. That's going to produce fruit and sugar. Now it's going to produce less liquor. And we will also expand this, I would say. We'll put it to there. And thank you to whoever it was that pointed out. Is it Control Shift? There we go. To add and subtract 5 at a time. So that's going to be a massive help. Thanks to Tanner, I think it was. And so we're going to expand that there, and we will add another to our food industries here in Leinster, which is on distilleries production method. So that is producing liquor. So we don't need to focus on the small amounts that we're getting from the farms. Instead, the farms will predominantly produce the sugar that is needed for both the base production method, for the food industries and the distilleries production method. So the Labour Party has just formed in Ireland a good couple of decades before James Connolly was on the scene. And we have a popular playwright endorses reform. Oscar Wilde is actually a character in... There's an Oscar Wilde template in the game. However, he is British. So I don't think he can appear in Ireland. But it's not Oscar Wilde. 10% success chance, 10% interest group attraction for the landowners, or Ireland gets prestige. We will go with that 10% success chance. Oh, we'd want to get this police force in line quickly. We could be heading towards a revolution. Now, I'm not too sure how revolutions work. I haven't actually handled a lot of the military game, and playing as Ireland, I didn't expect to be requiring a bit of a military so quickly, but what we're going to do is food. Who needs food? And another handy tip that I figured out is alt-click and puts it down to the bottom. So we will get, in a few weeks, we will get our some couple of soldiers built, hopefully enough to create a kind of a home guard, the Irish Volunteers. And the following states would secede. Ulster. Oh yeah. It'd have to be Ulster causing trouble, all right, wouldn't it? The red flags of revolution have been raised in Ulster. Like this video to help counter this menace. And here we have the military screen for our mighty Irish army using the same weapons they were using in 1690 at the Battle of the Boyne. Let's recruit a general. There isn't a huge amount of units for them to command Edward Talbot or Jack Ash. As we're under British rule, effectively, of course we have what are basically British uniforms. It'd be interesting to see what some mods could do to make Irish uniforms, something like the ones from the 1803 rebellion. Imperious Open Terrain Commander. Yeah, that lad's a bigot. We'll go with Jack Ash. We have an election result. The Liberal Party on 63%. The Irish National Land League has been pushed down to 2.1. The Labour Party has actually gone ahead of them, which makes up the trade unions. We're seeing this revolution is pushing up again. It's gone up to 53%. If we can get the police force enacted, it will stop a degree of the radicalisation. We have failed. Some dissenters break ranks. To outside observers, the landowners may appear firmly committed to the ideal of a local police force, but behind the facade of unity, discord has long festered. Now a clique of dissenters has finally had enough, and have officially broken with their fellow members over the issue of reform. Loosen our purse strings. Perhaps we can lure some of them back. I think that's very thematic. In the late 1700s, there was a vote on the unification of the Kingdom of Ireland and the Kingdom of Great Britain. It was defeated in the Irish Parliament. The Kingdom of Great Britain almost bankrupted itself. Brought itself very close to bankruptcy, bribing the Parliament to vote itself out of existence, and the second vote passed. And that's how Ireland ended up as part of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. So yeah, sure, throw money at the problem. So we've gotten our food industry leveled up in Dublin. We're going to allow a bit of an investment pool to grow before we go and put money into anything else. We still have over $250,000 in gold reserves. And we have a good, healthy profit. I don't know if I want to put this down to... I think we can bring up military and government wages. I think we might just keep this at high taxes. Again, that was Britain's way of dealing with Ireland, was very high levels of taxation, so we'll continue that tradition. I imagine what you're seeing is a kind of a pro-British government in power in Ireland at the moment. We're seeing standard of living change that isn't red for once. We're seeing an ever so slight change in the standard of living. It's gone up from 11.5 to 11.6. It's another failed attempt to enact the police force, and we might have to abandon this at some stage, frustrated with the lengthy legal process surrounding local police force. Edward Lambert of the Landowners has approached us with an offer to expedite the process, utilising his personal connections within the state apparatus. Minus 20% enactment time, intelligentsia, -2 interest group approval. Time is of the essence. Now, because we are pissing off the revolutionaries so much, I have now increased the barracks in Leinster to level 5 to give Jack Ash some more soldiers. We're moving into the 1840s, and we haven't done a huge lot. We have actually increased the GDP by about 1 million, which isn't great. It's something though. And like I said, the standard of living is no longer tanking at the very least. I do think that the relative prices have increased, so clothing has gone up by a good chunk. Groceries have dropped ever so slightly. Opium. Opium is still pricey. Since the last time we were here, I think sugar has increased a slight bit in value, but we can see that there's a good chunk, well, there's a chunk more sell orders over buy orders. I'm going to increase the food industry here in Leinster by 1, and in Munster, we're just going to add 2 rye farms, and we will add 5 ranches. Now, these are going to produce fabric, fertilizer, and meat. They will consume grain, which isn't the worst. That's quite cheap at the moment. Tools, however, might be another issue. Another attempt to enact the police force. It has succeeded. And imagine if it took us that long to get rid of the police force when we tried to do this day 1. Can you imagine how bankrupt we would have gone? So we were very lucky in that last episode in how quickly we were able to get rid of the institutions. Revolution has pushed up a bit again. Radicalism will start to drop now that we actually have a police force in place, but we might very well need to give Jack Ash a few more soldiers under his command. So we have the food industry built in Leinster. We have 2 buildings being built now in Munster due to the construction sector increases. And what I might do is add a bit more of a construction sector. So you can see that Leinster is basically remaining 2 steps ahead of everyone else, then Munster, then Ulster. Connacht will do something for you. There you go. This is what we need, more radicalism. We could radicalize 5% of the lower strata of pops in Leinster. I think we're going to go this time to increase the political strength of the trade unionists. And we will radicalize 5% of the upper pops. We have a lot of radicalized pops at the moment. We are into what would have historically been Black 47. One of the worst years, the worst year of the Great Hunger. And the revolution levels had just hit a dangerously nice level, and they've now dropped by 2 percentage points. You can see that our population has dropped from 8.01 million, so 8 million, to 6.8 million. We've lost 1.2-ish since we declared independence, became our own country. Standard of living has been pretty flat. We've an option for language in the classroom. English. Oh, English students sometimes use their native language in Irish schools. No, the divils. Get a little chalkboard, hang it around their necks, and every time they speak a word of English, you put a chalk mark on the board, and at the end of the day, you bait them with a cane once for each mark on the chalkboard. That's how you get them to stop. Some have called for the teachers to penalise the use of these languages, forcing children to speak the official language of Ireland. So we'll get minus 20% radicals from discrimination, which isn't exactly the worst at the moment. So plus 390 from discrimination. The overwhelming majority is from unfulfilled political movement demands. Standard of living isn't great either. As for those political movement demands, I've tried nothing and I'm all out of ideas. I'm not getting rid of the police. Go away. And we're not enacting legal guardianship either. So we could get them to speak the proper language. So English pops would become radical. Yeah. Laur Gaeilge. God damn it, Britain, stop doing this. Stop terrifying me. I saw this big red square jump up. I saw everyone was mobilising. I thought, oh dear God, no. Cape Colony is going to land troops in Ireland to help put down this rebellion. Britain has gone to war with the East India Company. This might affect market prices somehow. It's not going to affect us going in any direction as yet. We can see that, yeah, we need to concentrate on food and on clothing. Those are the two main areas that we need to concentrate. We can see that there's a lot of turmoil in Ulster. We're beginning to see some tax wastage in the region. But our main goal at the moment is going to be to finish building this food industry, maybe put in a couple of soldiers, and then we will consider some laws. I'm not going to lie, that terrified me. War has broken out with East India, with the East India Company. I think we might just about have the ability to put our law enforcement investment level up to level 3. We'll try anyway. And that will hopefully bring in some minus state penalties from turmoil. So I've paused construction on our glass factory. We're making... It's mostly that interest. That interest is causing us a bit of problems. So what we're going to do is we're going to put another consumption tax in place. Maybe not on opium, because it looks like a lot of people are consuming opium. For now, I think we will tax services. Nearly taxed clothing there for a minute. Lads, you deactivate the police for a couple of years, and the people, boys, they get used to it. They get used to it. We will resume construction while we have a bit of an investment pool. Not much of an investment pool. We'll see how much it gets done. So the law enforcement institutions have gone up. The rebellion screen has disappeared. We're still seeing areas in turmoil. I don't think the number has started to drop. It has dropped slightly. We had 240,000 plus 240,000 there for a while, so it is decreasing the rate at which they're entering turmoil. And we've had an election in which the Liberal Party has come out with 51%, followed by the Conservatives, Labour, and the Irish National Land League on 1.1%, which is negligible. The rural folk are quite angry with us. That's giving us a minus 20% technology spread. We're going to kick them out of government, and we're going to bring in the Liberal Party. So the Conservatives and the Liberal Party are going to rule. We have the armed forces in, who aren't the happiest. And the industrialists, they might be helpful to us in passing some laws. Something I've just noticed. His Majesty, Harry Hamilton. He's a member of the devout. He's a pacifist. His son and heir, William, is a Republican. So I was thinking that we'd get through the life of the first Irish king, Harry Hamilton. I like to imagine he's kind of the Duke of Ireland, which is a title that existed very briefly in the late 1300s, I think 6 years. I like to imagine that that's what he is, as opposed to the actual king. But we're going to wait until Prince William comes to power, and I think he will push for the introduction of a Republican constitution. We will confirm these changes. In search of some laws that will keep people in the government happy, here is one of the only ones that everyone will agree on. Armed forces and industrialists will support it, and the landowners. And the landowners and the armed forces will support colonial resettlement. I think with the way the population is fleeing the country, would we get them to resettle or would we get them to exploit areas? I think probably we might go for resettlement. Now we have been warned that we will enter a bureaucratic shortfall. I think we're going to have to continue for a while until we get the credit down a bit. We're beginning to see a bit of radicalization again. Uh-oh, it's the rural folk this time. And you know what? That figure is pushing so close to revolution that we're actually going to have to abandon the attempts to install it. Let's see if that brings the revolution back. Have we stopped the revolution? Or are we in trouble? We might be in trouble. We've gotten a handful of extra soldiers into Leinster. I think what we're going to need to do, what we're going to need to focus on predominantly, is combating the radicalism in our state. We have 666 people, 1.89 of which are radicals. We're approaching a third of the entire population radicalized. For years, the people heavily opposed a local police force. They will, however, support a dedicated police force. The rural folk will endorse the change, as will the intelligentsia, who violently resisted the creation of a local police force. So we're going to enact this. Well, I think the East India Company has successfully declared independence from Great Britain. So we've all of a sudden jumped from being in an ever so slight negative, which is mostly caused by the additional expenses there at the bottom, 1,000 a year that we're paying to try and develop a can opener for the army. So I wonder if that is if East India Company has left the market and if things have changed. Oh, there have been some big changes. Already we can see grain, the cost of grain has suddenly skyrocketed. Clothing has skyrocketed as well, which might have something to do with the sudden uptick. Fertilizer is quite cheap, so we maybe don't need to continue expanding our livestock farms anymore. Dye has become very expensive. And sugar. Sugar has suddenly become very, very, very expensive. So that means that we're going to have to expand our farms in Munster in particular. What are you missing? Grain. There's a shortage of grain. So yeah, we're really going to need to pump up all of our farms throughout the island of Ireland, I think. Even Connacht. We have just seen an absolutely staggering fall in the standard of living from about 11.7 to 10.9. We can see that the upper and middle strata are getting quite close to the minimum expected. The lower strata are they're not doing great. They're 33% above the base price is what they're paying for their goods. If we check the middling, 25%, and the secure is 15%. So if we just take a look at some of the costs here, we can see the grain has gone through the roof, 52%, clothing has gone up, liquor has gone up, opium, 75% above the base price. Ah, boys, if a man can't get a good bit of opium, sure, there's no point to living. I think what we're going to have to do is look at opening up some import routes. A lot of that stuff we intend to produce ourselves. Groceries are actually just at plus 2.5% at the moment. But Liquor is something that we need to deal with. Clothing is something that we need to deal with. Grain is something that we need to deal with so we can expand greatly what's going on in Munster. However, we are in a position, like I said, where we have 800, nearly 900,000 in debt, which is 2.7 thousand in interest payments, so I would like to try and dig myself out of that hole. I thought that we would save the Irish economy from itself in this episode, possibly. The Irish economy needs to be saved from me. We have increased our GDP. We've almost doubled our GDP since the start of the episode. I think we were down at low 4 millions. So we are shoving up. We're up to 20th in the world. But still, 13 years after independence, we're still dealing with some issues. We're still dealing with some issues with the island on a knife edge, surrounded by revolutionaries, up to 2.3 million. And with the economy in turmoil, I will leave it there for today. Thank you all very much for joining me. If you haven't done so already, do subscribe. Check out the CK3 Druid series. I'll be finishing that off shortly. Thank you all very much for joining me, and I will talk to you all on the next one.